All right. Glad to have everyone here and everybody who's joining us online for our Wednesday night class. Continuing in our series of Jesus Encounters. This is our last month. We have 4 Wednesdays left in this. Tonight we're going to talk about Zacchaeus and the lawyer. We'll get a little bit more specific with that, but we'll start with Zacchaeus tonight. And we're just trying to learn how Jesus handled different type of encounters in different type of situations and different type of people, how he handled those encounters, and maybe, just maybe, it can help us in a possible situation, circumstance, or a daily encounter that we might have. You know, you can go back and like, okay, well, this is what Jesus did when he had this encounter. Not saying that's what you'll be thinking right at that moment, but maybe if you have time to reply or to handle the situation or encounter, maybe you can go, okay, well, now in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10, okay, I remember us talking about that in Bible class, and Zacchaeus, he was a official, a high-ranking official, rich man, and Jesus handled this encounter this way. So, okay, that gives me an example of how I can do it. You know, when little kids, I remember when I used to have to take the Iowa Achievement Test. No matter what the subject was, science, reading, English, whatever, they gave you examples. They gave you an example of a question. And when you're in grade school, they give you an example of how to color in the circle even. So you can see exactly how to do it. And maybe that's where it started, I don't know. But for my whole life, I do a lot better when I have an example of, it could be visual, it doesn't have to be visual, it could be observing somebody, how they do something, or listening to someone talk, or the way someone talks. I'm sure that my voice, I know it has that southern, but my mom was from East Texas, my dad's from eastern Oklahoma. That's where I was raised. If I would have been born in London, England, and grew up in London, England, I would have an English accent. But the example that I had growing up, that's what I saw, and that's what I did. That's how I became. I've told you guys this. The examples of the people who started me being a Christian and what I call like my foundation are all women. My mom, my grandma, and my early first Bible class teacher, Reba Lloyd. Her son, who's the preacher at the Summerfield Church of Christ, and that's where I first got baptized and grew up. It was, if you had 60, that was a good week, usually 50, 60 there. But she taught, Bible class, just like Patty does here on Sunday mornings. But those are the 3. Now, I had some male influences that helped me grow, stuff, but that laid the foundation. It was all ladies, but they were examples of going to church, of teaching Bible class, visual examples. And the reason I'm kind of talking is I'm hoping that that's what we're seeing. Because let me ask you, raise your hand if you had an interaction today with somebody. If you had some type of interaction with some person today, it could have been verbally, whatever. I think just about everybody's hand would go up. Okay? We have interactions every day. Every single day there's an interaction. Now, it may not always be with the same person. The situation may not always be the same. The circumstance may not always be the same. But there's usually some type of interaction. And it's usually of a verbal, interaction. Now, we do know that nonverbal communication exists. And there could be a nonverbal interaction between you and someone else. Maybe a stare, maybe in there. I mean, there might be a lot of different things that come from it. And we've all had positive interactions, but we've also had negative interactions, haven't we? Not every interaction that we have is going to be positive. It's not. I mean, like every conversation that you've had in your life with different people, was every one of those conversations nice and easy and went real well? Congratulations. Congratulations. If you've never had a tough conversation with anybody, congratulations. God bless you. I'm proud of you. And after service tonight, we need to get together. You need to talk to me. You need to teach me some lessons. You need to teach me how you are living your life, because I need to find out. Yeah, we have tough interactions. We have tough conversations, don't we? That is just, it's not that we search that or we look for that. It just kind of happens, doesn't it, sometimes? We don't know why it happens. But, we might know why sometimes it happens, but it just happens. We have these tough interactions, these awkward. Have you ever had an awkward interaction with somebody? Is anybody in here? Don't raise your hand if you don't want to. Yes.
I know why we have tough interactions. It's because some people are just crazy.
Not everybody sees the world the way we see it, do they? You ever have embarrassing interactions where you were like, oh man, I'm embarrassed. And you might not even be part. How is it? Have you ever observed an interaction? Let me ask you this. Have you ever been the third person in an interaction and you just are watching this car crash about to happen as it's happening? You're watching this car crash. You're seeing this interaction between two people, and you know where it's headed. You know where it's headed. You can see it in there. Now, trying to know my audience, even with me, we're talking about experienced people with interactions. You guys have probably seen all kinds of interactions. Good ones, bad ones, all the ones that we just mentioned tonight. And the sad part and the bad part is an interaction can end a relationship with someone. Yes, sir.
I was thinking of the debate between two, like in a class, you have two views that are, they're both sides, have lots of evidence, and it's done in a way to persuade others. And so the interaction we have sometimes is not
And sometimes we have interactions to change people's minds, don't we?
I find that when you have a conversation with someone, it becomes more or less a verbal confrontation. At some point, maybe you or the other person can see that they need to stop. And then the relationship, like you said, they don't have it. Or it's hard to do.
An interaction with somebody could end a 20-year relationship. The wrong interaction, that's how fragile it is. I was talking to a guy today, and I really think used to people would say when you wanted a job, and I'm not saying it doesn't still hold true. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think there's still some truth to that, okay? And I think that helps you get an interview, which is pretty much all someone can really do for you if they say, hey, I'll try to help you get a job. Really and truly, the best they can do usually is get you an interview, okay? But if you ask me, Terril, how do you get a job? Like, what's the job? To me, what I have learned in my personal experiences is, yes, that helps. It's not, knowing people helps. Don't get me wrong on that. Timing. Comedians, it's crucial to them, isn't it? Like, nobody probably has better timing than a professional comedian. Timing is everything to them. And one thing I've looked at with jobs, because jobs maybe I thought I was going to have and didn't get, or it was timing. If it would have been some other time, I might have got that job, or I might not have got that job. And so a lot of times people ask me, well, I tell them the most important thing is timing. Now, here's the deal with timing. We don't always have control over that, do we? We don't always have control over timing. There's sometimes circumstances and situations that come into play that affect the timing. We don't have control over those circumstances and things. An interaction, timing is involved. It is. I don't know to what degree. It depends on the interaction. It depends on how it is. And the thing about timing is, I don't know how you practice it. I don't know if it's just, well, some people have got it and some people don't. I don't even know if that's true or not. I don't know. Maybe you can say that, and maybe you can, and maybe you can't. But man, timing. That is a word you don't hear a lot about. But so many things happen because of timing. Well, he said the right thing at the right time. When I say that, and I'm getting off here a little bit, but when I say the right thing at the right time, I think about people who have lost someone. And you console them, but you got to be careful what you say when you're consoling them. Your heart might be in the right place. Your intellect might be in the right place, and you might have had good intentions. But you have to be careful about that kind of stuff. And I've heard Lanny talk about that before. Good intentions doesn't always, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. Good intentions doesn't always work, does it? And that timing of that interaction. Hey, we're going to see Jesus' timing was perfect in the things he said, when he said it, how he said it. I don't know of a better example. If you ask me, Terril, well, give me that example like we talked. I'm like, well, read the Gospels. Read the Gospels. Because there's a lot of timing in those Gospels. Jesus saying the right thing at the right moment. I don't really know a else of an example to follow than that. But those 4 Gospels, that timing, that example, that interaction, that choosing your words, all that. And let's face it, some people are better than others. Let's just face it. Some people are better. Some people have a gift of saying the right thing at the right time, don't they? They do. Let's just face it. They do. They have that gift. It's a gift from God. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to talk about that a little bit since we've been covering this interaction thing all. There's some specifics and details that go into these interactions. And it's not that I guess in a way I'm trying to make not just you but myself better at interactions because we have them every day. You're going to have an interaction tomorrow. I don't know who all with. Probably obviously it could be a friend. I don't know. But you're going to have an interaction. And sometime you're going to have a bad interaction. It's like anything else. You could do something 1,000 times. There's going to be some mess ups, right? You're a human being. You're going to sometimes say the wrong thing, not maybe like me sometimes not get something that somebody said, which I'm sometimes really bad at. Somebody's like, oh, I didn't get that. I used to be the worst at not getting jokes. I'm going to tell you right now. I was terrible at it. Somebody would say a joke, and there'd be 2 or 3 kids laughing, and I'd just laugh, but I'd be thinking to myself, I don't understand what that meant. Honestly, I was terrible at that. Getting jokes, and I felt like I was that big sometimes in there. Anything else you want to say before we start talking about these 2 interactions tonight? Just details about interactions in general that maybe if you feel comfortable and you ever want to share an experience, you're welcome to, but that's totally up to you. If you ever feel comfortable about an experience with that, we talked about that at the beginning. If that's something, you're more than welcome to share it with the class. Okay, Zacchaeus. I think comedy when I first hear Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a wee little man he was Zacchaeus. It's like kind of for little kids, it's like a little Bible story that you hear and a kid hears it and they laugh and they start, oh, Zacchaeus, a wee little man, and that's about where it ends, is like he's a wee little man, Now, when I hear wee little man, I'm thinking someone like about this tall, I'm just telling you what I think, I coached a kid one time who was, he was a little person. That's what they liked. That's the preference is a little person.
He didn't go up and dunk it every time.
No, he didn't. The shorts he wore were small and they came over his knees, and they were in there. But he was on our JV basketball team at Oklahoma Christian. I coached him on the JV team, And one time, he was a great kid. Great kid. One time we were playing a junior college. It was NOC Enid. They were really good. And this is a JV team, but playing. A kid from NOC Enid, they went to trap him. And this is a true story. They went to trap him. He faked the pass, and the guy kind of jumped, and he went in between his legs through the trap and dribbled. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. He went like that. That guy jumped, and he went under his legs, and that's how he got out of the trap that he was in. That's a true story. It's unbelievable. He was a great kid. But, that's when I Zacchaeus in my mind, I think of, obviously someone not very tall. Okay, let's go to Luke. We're going to read Luke chapter 19. We're going to read verses 1 through 10 about Zacchaeus. We're going to talk about him a little bit, and then we're going to talk about this lawyer, okay? And I'm kind of interested to hear what some of you say about interactions with lawyers. And we're going to keep it positive, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay, a couple of things about Zacchaeus right off the bat. And I'll tell you what, let's read first. Let's read. I've talked enough. Let's read. So Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. And we've talked about Jesus' interactions with wealthy people, haven't we? It's kind of something we've been talking a lot about last 3 out of 4 weeks. We didn't so much last week. But he had interactions with wealthy people. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Is there any similarity between what he just did and that woman trying to reach Jesus' clothes, fighting through the crowd to reach Jesus' clothes last week? Similar, isn't it? I just thought, when I was just reading that, I just thought of that. This little similarity between the two. It was almost like, you're not going to keep me from seeing him. I'm going to figure something out. I can tell you right now, when I first had my first full-time teaching job, and I was still finding ways to play PlayStation at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night. Because a full-time job in 8 hours, I wanted to play that so bad, nothing was going to keep me from doing that. So I would just wait till the kids little babies were in bed, and I was going to find a way. If you want to find a way to do something, most of the time, you're going to do it. And you're going to say, we always say we have limitations, but let me tell you, if somebody's determined to do something, it's pretty hard to stop them from doing it. They're going to figure something out. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. How does Jesus know who he is? Even though they had not had an interaction before, huh? So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter. What do you think they're saying? Begin to mutter? What is mutter? Yeah. Are tax collectors very well thought of? What do we know about Matthew? Yeah, this guy's the chief, isn't he? He's not just a tax collector, he's the chief. He's probably not very well liked. Let's go way back to when he had the interaction with the Samaritan woman. We talked about how that was not Jews and Samaritans. Okay? I mean, what you see is Jesus doesn't care. He doesn't care what people think. I mean, he knows that they're going to... He doesn't care what people think. He probably didn't. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There was always Pharisees there watching Jesus.
Right. That's a good point. I forgot about that. That's a good point.
You know, they've already said, this guy is a sinner, and Jesus
Yeah.
is going to...
Good point. I forgot about that. Yep. Yeah, because they're like shadows, aren't they? They're shadows. And we know, we've talked about this, they're looking for him to mess up. They're always in the shadows, aren't they? And that's really what they are, shadows. Like, they're just there. Okay, so, but Zacchaeus, it says, all the people saw this and muttered, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus says to him, this is the interaction that's going on, okay? You're seeing the interaction. Jesus says to him, let me ask you this. Does an interaction have to be a two-way, or can it be a one-way? Is it an interaction if it's only coming one way from one person? I think it's got to be two-way. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I'm asking that question a little bit for myself. But I think my thought is it has to be two. You guys agree with that? It's an interaction. Yeah. That's what I think. Okay, so Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. What are your thoughts on that? On how Jesus says, especially how it ends up. What are your thoughts? First of all, Zacchaeus has got to be feeling good about himself. To have Jesus say those things has to make Zacchaeus feel good about himself. And obviously Zacchaeus has known about Jesus to go to the extremes that he did. You know? But it says that for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. I mean, it's pretty much all right there. More than anything, to me, it does. More than anything, it seems like Zacchaeus, even that name alone, is pretty. Yeah. 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 I would think so. Yeah. Yeah. I would think so. How do you think Zacchaeus' life changed because of his encounter with Jesus? How did his life change? Okay. Well, one thing could be, too, he might have had more of a commitment to something like an economic type justice. I think that's something to think about. But think of the encounters you've had in your life that have changed your life. Or if they didn't change them, shaped your life. I told you that I'm sure some encounters I've had growing up that have shaped who I am. That's what happens with encounters. They can change your life. They can shape your life.
Well, he was a Jew because in the previous verse it says, he also was the son of Abraham.
Okay.
There's no question about what it is. Do you think he felt guilty in his past?
I think there's a possibility to that. Could be.
Jesus didn't ask him to give half of his possessions to the poor. He didn't ask him anything about that. So Zacchaeus knew what he had been doing was not kosher.
Now, sometimes we can be doing our job or the job we're supposed to, but we know that it could be hurting somebody. But we feel like but this is our job, and this is what that we do. We may not mean to hurt somebody, but we know that it might hurt somebody. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yes.
I think the people view his tactics were unfair, but in order to live in somewhat of a relationship with the Romans, they paid taxes, and it was very hard for all of them. All of it did that out of Jesus.
It's my understanding that he came from Rome and tax collector. You would get the license to get as much money as you can, any way you can. You just expect this amount of money from you. You send back to Rome. And you're only Rome and the rest.
They didn't ask opinions back then.
They were given an opportunity.
Yeah.
And when Jesus looked at him, he was looking deeply into Zacchaeus. I can't imagine. But Jesus, any interaction he's had, people came around to, in just a few words, knowing what they were doing was not right. And Jesus just had this, because he's God, he had this way of
Mm-hmm.
and convicting somebody.
One thing about Zacchaeus, and I think we've said it, but I think it's really important is that he recognized his obstacles. He recognized some things that he could do, that he recognized it. That doesn't always happen. People don't always recognize, even when they're pointed out, they don't always recognize ways they can be better or ways they can help. Zacchaeus did. He recognized What else? What's some other thoughts? Right. Right. I wrote down one other thing. I said what the story teaches us about forgiveness, that we can be forgiven each time we ask God for forgiveness. And that's, I mean, we say that a lot, but man, that is a great feeling to have. Maybe if we mess up an interaction or we don't handle an interaction the way that maybe a Christian should, okay, then, you know, the fact that we have that forgiveness is, that helps. I mean, it helps. Beyond belief helps. Anything else on Zacchaeus? Okay. All right. Let's go to the lawyer. Go to Luke. Let's just stay in Luke since that's where we're at. Let's go to Luke 10, and we're going to go verses 25 through 37. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read it, and then we'll talk about it. So we got time to talk about it. So, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus replies, "What is written in the law?" He replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, so we're starting right off with the interaction. He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And Jesus replies, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." So what are your first thoughts before we get it? What's some first things on this interaction that jump to your mind? I'm going to tell you the first thing that when I was reading this, in verse 25 it says, "On one occasion an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus." is his intentions good to start with? What do we talk about intentions, you know? It feels like to me, and you guys tell me if you disagree, it feels like this story doesn't start off good, but it ends good.
Like when you sort of know, or you think you know the answer to a question, when you ask what somebody thinks about it.
It's almost like the Pharisees do sometimes.
You feel like their motive is they want to start an argument. That's almost my least favorite thing to do is argue. And I'm not pretty good at it.
Well, what do we know about lawyers?
They're paid to argue in certain situations.
Yeah. Do you think this lawyer's looking for an argument right here? Do you think he might be looking for an argument?
He's trying to set it up so we can turn it on. Discredit it.
Right.
I think Jesus recognized what the lawyer was trying to do in testimony. And realizing that, he turned the tables on him and made the lawyer come up with the answer.
What about the story that Jesus tells? Why would he choose that? What's the relevance of the story that he chose to tell the lawyer?
You have two righteous men, that's man and me, mine, go over Samaritan. Terrible Samaritan will be help.
The people they call dogs.
Yeah.
John, were you going to say something? Yeah. Okay, I thought you were maybe saying something. Jesus can paint a picture, can he? He can paint a picture.
The two silver coins were 2 days' wages, which would keep the man for up to 2 months in an inn.
Yeah, the Samaritan is going above and beyond. He didn't just help him. He's going to put up the hotel, reimburse. He's going above and beyond. Yeah. Yeah. And we see that the lawyer comes back, and the lawyer knew right away, didn't he? He asked, the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. I mean, you have to, again, You know, some of these interactions, you have to remember the people that we're talking about are educated people. If this lawyer was an educated person, right? He knew it was the one that had mercy. And then Jesus says, go and do likewise.
It doesn't say who the man was that got beat up. He might have been a Samaritan. It doesn't matter if he was a Jew or a Samaritan.
I don't know what happened first or second with the woman at the well when they were traveling through Samaria. If that happened before this, because they all went back to town and said, we've got somebody here that knows everything about me. He's the Messiah. And maybe this guy, this Samaritan, and why this guy got beat up, knew of him. He felt compassion for the guy that was beat up. There's some people, you see it on TV, that beat people up, police, you name it, they just beat them in the streets. And there's 50 people around them and nobody does anything. Now, those are really great Samaritans. That's our society. You wonder why that is. They don't know Jesus, do they? We're a Christian, trying to help them? I don't know.
Sometimes helping is messy.
Yes. No matter what it is, you're helping them. It can be messy.
It's almost always not convenient.
Yep. It seems like it's hardly ever convenient, doesn't it? Well, doesn't it say they walked on the other side of the street? Yeah. Does that kind of stuff, John, you kind of said it, does that kind of stuff happen today? It does, doesn't it? We're not talking about situations that just happen. These are encounters and situations that we see today. I think all these encounters that we have talked about this quarter, I can't think of a one, maybe you can, is not something that doesn't happen today.
The book of John is full of this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's just one right after another. He's meeting people, he's reading, he already knows what they're going to say before they say it, back. It's just, if you read the book of John and you don't believe in Jesus, you've got a lot. There's a lot.
What does it mean to have dignity? What is dignity? If someone has a lot of dignity, what does that mean?
Self-worth, is that the same thing? Close.
Okay.
Not the only thing. I don't think you can have dignity and still be humble. Like Paul said, don't think any more of yourself.
Well, and I've heard things say, well, I've got to save what I have left of my dignity. I've heard things like that said before. You know, or I've got to save my dignity.
That could follow you for your entire life. My dad was not a Christian, but he would always say, he would take a handshake over a written piece of paper. And I've followed that, because you can shake somebody's hand and it wipes out
Bob, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you used to run, I know you're a boss, you used to business. I'm sure when you hired people, you wanted people who had strong dignity. What does that mean to you, if you don't mind me asking you and kind of putting you on the spot, in the role that you had?
Who had great character,
Yeah.
not reputation, but character. I heard a young man one time, he had previously worked at Walmart. He had gotten fired because he had stolen something. That was the first thing he told me. I hired him, he's one of the best employees I ever had. He had great dignity or great character.
And he was honest with you right off the bat.
He was first to say that the dignity, knows right and wrong, chooses right.
Did Zacchaeus have dignity?
In the conversation, I would question his dignity prior calling.
That interaction that Zacchaeus had definitely changed him, didn't it? Of course, you would say, anybody say, well, anytime you have an interaction with Jesus, that's going to change you. What interactions do we have with Jesus now today? What are the type of interactions we have with Jesus today?
I just pray and talk to him. I give him what I've got, problem-wise or not problem, thank him, apologize to him, like he's, some preachers would say, he's your dad. He's easier to talk to than your dad. Your real dad. Yeah, you can't pull one over his eyes.
You can already see through.
Yeah.
What? Yes, sir.
To me, it would be when you're in a difficult situation. You do the right thing. That's when your interaction with Jesus.
Right. Especially doing the right thing when it's harder to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. And maybe even to the point where I can do the wrong thing and I can probably get away with it. Now, the one thing that comes up to my mind is lying, but there could be other things. But you know what? I can get away with this wrong thing and it can benefit me and no one's going to know about it. And like you said integrity earlier. That's one thing about integrity. Doing the right thing when nobody knows about it. Let's say this Samaritan that helped. I would say that he doesn't want his name in the paper just because he helped this person. He wasn't looking to put his name in the paper.
I had a friend of mine, she's passed away, over at Hartford when I was there. And I don't know why, but I was like her go-to guy. If somebody was hurting for money or whatever, she would hand me an envelope and say, give this to so-and-so, don't let anybody know where it came from. That happened several times. And I would just do that. She would always say, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. That's biblical.
Yeah.
Or the right or the left, or whatever it is. But that's,
So it's not sometimes just the fact that you help them, which is great, but that you're not looking, that person's not looking for anything out of that. They're just wanting to help.
That is a beautiful person.
That's a person that has dignity. That's a person that has integrity. That's a person that has character. You know what coaches say a lot of times is they want a team that has character, not a team full of characters. Coaches say that all the time. I guarantee you next week I'm going to be saying that when we have our first meeting. I want a team full of character, not a team full of characters. Yeah. In there. And that's, that's what we see. And, we don't know how the lawyer lived the rest of his life. We don't know how Zacchaeus lived the rest of his life. But we know that we're reading right now that these interactions had an effect on him. They had an effect. And we know that they were positive effects, at least at the moment, especially with Zacchaeus. I don't know what the lawyer, I don't know how he ended up living his life the rest of the way. I don't know. I don't know if people started liking Zacchaeus after this. I don't know. But now what about this? What if Zacchaeus started living his life right, but people couldn't get past him being a chief tax collector? Now who's at fault? That can't get past that. Yes, ma'am.
Zacchaeus may have ended up really, really poor too, given all of that.
Yeah.
Fact that he knew he
I'm just thinking, and I don't even know, but I want to ask you, what's the difference between Zacchaeus and the rich young ruler? I just thought of that too.
Christ didn't tell Zacchaeus to give up everything he had.
Zacchaeus went and done it where,
Zacchaeus came up with the answer.
and the rich young ruler didn't. So you got two people in similar situations. Well, both were in an interaction with Jesus. We know that. But one went one way and the other went another way. Zacchaeus might have been a little man, but he had a big heart. And he was willing to sacrifice what he had. Rich young ruler wasn't. So, anything else before we will do announcements and stuff, but before we sign off on this tonight? All right, and we are